I think that a lot of people look at potential and they'll look at success and they don't understand that it's a process.
Right.
They think that it's you can have it quickly, and it's one of those things that even when you have it and 30 years down the road, you're still going to look back and say, okay, I still have more potential.
Right.
So to realize and understand that it's a process and that you are growing, that's really important for potential, because if you can't realize that you are making steps in the right direction, then that's where the restlessness comes in. That's where you have no hope anymore. And so I think it's important to remember that it's a process, it's a journey, and that you are growing. Just stick with it.
Welcome to Generation Giants podcast. My name is Kyle, here with my friends Jonathan Gatlin and Kyle Sheldon, and I'm super excited about today. Today, to introduce the topic, we're going to be talking about growth, talking about personal development in a very intentional way, drawing primarily from a book called The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John C. Maxwell, one of my favorite authors. Gat, what can you say about John C. Maxwell?
Bro, John C. Maxwell, man, he teaches a mindset, man. I think it's so important to not only take what he says, but apply that to your life. And so I hope that we do speak to people that want to make an application of growth in their life. And Maxwell is just one of, there's other great guys, but he actually, I'm crazy, but I love to like kind of see who's the best, right?
Yeah.
And so I went online on Google and I typed in #1 leadership guru.
Yeah.
And John Maxwell actually is the #1 leadership guru. And I studied a little bit deeper, and I found that he's led the last 8 presidencies. Like the last 8 presidents, he's spoken to their whether you like the president or not, John Maxwell has counseled and interviewed and taught some of the presidents leadership and stuff. So that's pretty important.
Yeah, I was going to say great leader or greatest leader.
I mean, one of them for sure.
Yeah, he's one of the top ones. Yeah, so I've really enjoyed reading John Maxwell, and this is a gem. This was one of the first books I read by him, and really helped to initiate my personal growth. And we're all growing towards something, and I think there's a lot of value in being aware of where you're going. And this book just hones in on the laws of growth, how to grow, helps you to understand so that you can then design your growth. And I know we wanted to define some of these terms at the front end. Kyle, I know you wanted to define some terms, and it looks like I didn't even sit the seat correctly. So, yeah, no, you're good. Yeah. If you want to define, I know you want to define success was one of the terms. What was one thing that you want to speak into the listeners about what success means?
Yeah, so as far as success goes, people have different definitions for it. And I just really wanted to hone in on the fact that success is not necessarily what you are doing, but it's who you are when you're doing it. So I know that personally for my life, that's been a big transition for me. And I've had success, but the more I realized that success in itself wouldn't make me happy, the more I realized that I really wanted to be a different person, and who I was in that success is what really mattered. And I wanted to be
so key.
A better man in general. And so that was a big transition period. And it was interesting because when I started focusing on character and principle, that's when I really started seeing more success and more growth in my life. And I think that that's important. I think that we need to really remember the fact that success is who we are.
Yeah.
And who we are in finding and having success is. So I think that that's really important.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and us, especially as you enter the workplace, it's been said, Jim Rohn is where I heard this, work on your job, make a living, work on yourself, make a life, become wealthy, become successful when you work on yourself, not just, the what may even be mundane tasks at times in your job, you definitely want to be good at your job, but if you become a better person, that will inherently make you better at your job, or be a good student, or whatever it is you're trying to do. And, so that's great. Defining success up front, that's huge. one thing I maybe wanted to even talk about was just potential. To talk about growth means there's some kind of gap between who you are today and your potential. This, not imaginary, but this sort of hypothetical in the future state. And I think that's so important, such a key idea. And to even talk about growth, to me, as a metaphor, is to understand farming, gardening, to understand, the seed that is such a part of, church culture that we're a part of, because as a seed, and we're all kind of seeds, and you can even, we're all in growth somewhere. You're never really fully grown. Even the trees outside, they're all growing. And, you can even find as soon as you are aware of this kind of conversation, because most people listening won't be aware of this kind of conversation. I wasn't even aware of this book till I was in my 20s. And, you're the seed. And the interesting thing about the seed is it's so small, but it has everything it needs to grow into something. Like, it's just given. It didn't have to ask for anything. It just had everything it needed. That doesn't guarantee it's going to become something great. That's where you learn in farming. It takes hard work. It takes being intentional. It takes constantly watering. It takes even God, because we don't bring the rain. Just, we're at the end of the day, we're still at the mercy of other powers that we can't control. But I definitely think of that seed, and everyone has potential, I think. It's tough to see it when you're young, because you don't yet have a lot to look back on. But as we think about those students, the students that we used to be, it's like you can become greater, you can reach your potential.
Yeah. And one thing I've heard from a mentor of mine is potential is a good word, but it also can be a bad word when you don't actually fulfill that potential. Because potential is just what you have, but you got to go out and fulfill that potential. You got to go out and be that individual. We were talking in the car about a story about about someone who was called to do great things, but he didn't actually do the great things. And so he had potential to be great. Potential, it's a good word, but it's a bad if you don't fulfill that potential. Yeah,
there's a huge thing there in happiness too. I think one thing that causes unhappiness, now there's many things, unfulfilled expectations or something that causes unhappiness, but I think you have to be true to yourself too to become really happy and fulfilled. As soon as you believe you are something great, and you're not fulfilling that thing that you think you should be, that can make a lot of restlessness in you, I think.
Yeah, I think there's some important to add to that too. I think that a lot of people look at potential and they'll look at success, and they don't understand that it's a process. They think that it's you can have it quickly, and it's one of those things that even when you have it and 30 years down the road, you're still going to look back and say, okay, I still have more potential. So to realize and understand that it's a process and that you are growing, that's really important for potential, because if you can't realize that you are making steps in the right direction, then that's where the restlessness comes in. That's where you have no hope anymore. And so I think it's important to remember that it's a process, it's a journey, and that you are growing. Just stick with it.
Growth is such a process.
It is. One thing I love that. I want to also put something to the listeners. If you have quick success, who can you speak to? Who can you have a conversation with? Because a lot of people struggle, and it's so important to say me too. It's so important to connect with somebody. So if you have the quick success, who can you mentor?
That's right.
Because no one has the quick success, and so who you're speaking to, you have to go through this process. You scrape your knee. You have to fall down on your face, because the person that you're speaking into, they've done that. And you can teach them how to fall on your face, but get up and keep moving. And so we talk about this microwave, like he mentioned, this microwave mentality. And you have success, and you people are gonna boo you off the stage, to be honest, because they can't relate to you. You have to relate to other people.
That's so good. I think I heard it from Les Brown, another speaker, say that perseverance is the mark of a winner. It's a winner's quality. And that's something that I try to develop in myself. That's one reason why I like endurance sports. At this point, it's not so much for the physical aspect. You can't even see endurance. A lot of people go to the gym to, look fit, which is great. But endurance is something you can't really see, you know, unless you're in the weight loss phase. And, you know, at that point, it becomes more about stories that you can give, you know, and more about mental toughness. And that's why I like endurance, you know, perseverance. And you, especially being in business for years now, you know, I know it's taken perseverance as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of ups and downs. You know, starting up in college, I started up multiple different startups, and you know, things would they would rise and they would fall, and yeah, I would really just have to kind of take the hit and keep rolling. So persistence, endurance, all those things are extremely important when it comes to business, when it comes to success. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. That's so big.
Yeah, I mean, me too, man. Like, you know, I had some businesses and tried to cultivate some stuff also while I was, you know, y'all know that I was coaching as well. And so you have to keep going. I mean, it's some days are difficult. You know, he mentioned that he's gone through some struggles. Me too. Kyle's probably gone through some struggles as well.
Oh my gosh.
And so you just have to keep going because I heard this one time, and I don't remember who I heard it from, but they said literally your success or what you want to acquire in that, because we don't want to use success, because as he mentioned, I love how he mentioned that your character, when you grow yourself, that's really truly the mark of success.
Right.
But whatever goal, whatever aspirations that you want to reach are literally on that right on the other side of that tough time that you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. So literally right there at that other, you just one more step, and there's forces and there's things that try to come against you and stop you, but all you just need to do is just knock right through that door, and then that whatever that goal is right there at the end.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, especially thinking about the gym. You know, those last few reps. Kyle, I know you go to the gym plenty, good bit. You know,
sometimes.
You know, yes. Occasionally on a day ending in Y, you know, those last few reps in the set where, you know, you want to quit, that's where the real growth happens. And, you know, I was even listening and reading Jocko Willink, another guy that I listened to
stuff
online. And I was reading his book actually for students, and it was about, you know, when you plateau, the key to overcoming a plateau in growth, whatever it is, a goal, whatever it is more stimulation, you know, is make things even more difficult, make a bigger strain on your body. And we're actually going to be talking about, that's kind of one of the chapters in the book we're going to be talking about. Mm-hmm. And I got so motivated. I went, you know, I was like, man, I haven't, you know, really been able to bench press, you know, sets of over 205 in a while. So I was like, all right, I'm going to back down 10. You know, this was the other day. I literally just backed down 10 pounds, and I did like 20 reps, not 20 at once, but I did, you know, volume wise, like 20 reps. Whereas normally my regimen was like 10 or 12 reps total or whatever, you know, 3 sets of 5 or whatever, 3 sets of 4. So, you know, getting over that plateau, you know, really got to just stretch yourself, you know, and go through the tough things, you know. No great person has just made it without any challenges.
I agree.
And you know, we need to hear more of these successful people who have made it to some achievement, and we need to hear more about what they overcame.
Yeah.
You know?
Let me give y'all something here. Success, and I'm learning this even right now, but success is one of your worst enemies. Right, the success that we talk about, that not that we discuss here, because like I just want to get back to that. I love that point. Is that you've got to be growing. You've got to be growing because your capacity, the level that you're at, matches the level of your growth. So if some of y'all listeners, if y'all are not where you want to be in life, maybe it's because your growth is not at that level that you want to go. You you gotta grow you gotta continue to grow with your success. But success, if we're talking about success and money, whatever people, the world has taught you what success is. Mm-hmm. If you reach that, you don't you get to a place where you're complacent, and that'll stop your growth. You have success is an enemy as well when you're looking at it from the way that the world teaches you to look at it. Oh, let me get to this one place. We say hashtag goals all the time, right? Hashtag goals. So you reach that goal and you're done, or do you reach that goal and you want to be greater, right? you make a point?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I think that's kind of why I brought that up at the beginning about success is who you are in doing what you want to do. Because goals, you get to a point and you hit them. But when you focus on your character and your principles, it's something intangible. You can't see it, therefore you can't fully accomplish it. So you continue to grind and work on yourself. And yeah, you will see successes along the way. You will hit your goals along the way, but it's building that foundation, and the fundamentals of success is growth, but they're building blocks of growth. So, I mean, like you mentioned consistency, discipline, all these things are much more important than setting goals, because you'll start to realize that these are the building blocks of hitting every goal, whatever that may be. And so I think it's really important to realize that success is great, but when you invest in yourself, you are creating a limitless potential for those goals. And your success will only equal your character. It will only equal your principles. Right. And I think that's extremely important to really hit home. And I know I've been saying it over and over, but I consistently come back to that point, regardless of what I'm doing, success or not. So I think it's just a common denominator for everything. Yeah,
and I'm even thinking too, one big point of success and growth, as I think back to the tree, or the seed that becomes a tree, in the forest or whatever, in the outdoor environment, trees provide a lot more to the biology around them than we think. The tree isn't just there for the tree. The plant isn't just there for the plant. It provides a whole system of nurturing, of nutrients, of interactions. As a civil engineer, and I've studied a little bit of permaculture and landscaping, that kind of thing. I've read some books on this stuff. By no means an expert, but it's interesting to learn. And so taking that back to the growth conversation on us, as we grow, we get to provide nutrition. We get to provide help to those around us, which is so key. And Jesus talked about, as a tree grows, the birds get to nest in the branches, kind of thing. They get to have refuge from others. And so that's another key point too, especially students in schools or wherever you are, wherever you go, or it can just be your family and your siblings. Look for opportunities to provide that refuge, to provide that help, comfort as you're growing, as you learn something new, help pass it along to others. You know?
I think that's so key, man, especially when mentoring, because I have, I mentor a few people in life already. I always love to mentor, but what I do, the image that I portray has to be a leadership image. When somebody's following after you, they're always watching what your steps are. Right. Mm-hmm. So we've seen in the world, we've seen in the news, we've seen a lot of people getting in trouble for things that they missed in character wise. Right. Even I don't know the guy's name, but a very prominent individual, I think it was NBC or something. He just kind of failed, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so I love y'all's points, because when you're looking at it, your success from a character aspect, you won't do anything that is against the right character. You'll stay on path to because it's quick, man. It's very quick. Success is very quick to fall. It's very quick to go back, right? And your point, I love his point, because he mentions that you're an example, is essentially what you were saying. You're an example to other people who are watching you, who want to see. And sometimes y'all, there's going to be a time where you step out and you step out maybe outside the norm, and you're doing your call. You're in a place where you're going after it. And somebody's just going to look at you and say, wow, I wish I had it in me. Right. I wish I let the fear that is stopping me. And I want to step out into music. I want to step out in whatever it is that they want to step out into. And so when you're doing things in life, you're attacking life, you have to understand it may not just be for you, like you were saying. Somebody else is watching you saying, I can do it too. Let me see how he's doing it, and let me follow maybe some of his examples to have something in life that I want to attain.
Yeah. Yeah. If you see the growth process as just for you, I mean, you may fill some gap or hole that you have, but you're not going to get ultimate fulfillment, and you're not going to fulfill your calling to the world, because none of us live in our own little world. You're influencing people whether you like it or not, because you're part of other people's world. Someone's probably thinking about you this very moment that you're not even aware of, assuming hundreds, right? Because we all know in passing, we all know hundreds or thousands of people, right? And someone at some point is probably thinking of you. What are they thinking of you? And that little bit, even if they have a positive thought about you, that little bit can influence them even when you're not even aware of it.
That's good.
So
and we've been attacking it, right?
Attacking it, yeah. We're actually about at the point where we need to take our first break. So we'll take a minute break, and then we'll be back here in a minute. And we're back. So to give an overview of the book, now again, it's called The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. Get a little close up there for YouTube. Actually, the subtitle is Live Them and Reach Your Potential. So great book. Highly encourage everyone to, after this podcast, go download it on Audible or go buy the book. Go order the book on Amazon. I've got tons of markups. Literally almost every page has underlinings and markups. I mean, it's a great book. So this is actually one of the books I'm very, very happy I bought the book, not just Audibled it, because Audible is a great tool that I use just to get more volume, but some books you just got to read. So to kind of introduce or at least blaze through the titles of the book. So again, there's 15 laws, and we're going to be talking about a few of the laws here in this segment. So just to go through: Law of Intentionality, Awareness, the Mirror, Reflection, Consistency, Environment, the Law of Design, the Law of Pain, the Law of the Ladder, the Law of the Rubber Band, and that's the one I want to talk about, the Law of Trade-offs, the Law of Curiosity, the Law of Modeling, the Law of Expansion, and the Law of Contribution, which we actually kind of hit in the first segment. Mm-hmm. So I think you, Gat, were saying you want to talk a lot about the law of consistency. The subtitle here says, motivation gets you going, discipline keeps you growing.
Most definitely.
Really good.
And so one law that I did want to talk, I want to talk about law of consistency, but the law of modeling is pretty good for any models out there. Anybody that's going down the rate. Nah, I'm just kidding.
Doing the model thing, the GQ thing.
That's the law of modeling right there.
Even the models out there, you need to read this book.
You need to read this
to learn how to model.
The law of modeling.
There's pictures in here and everything. It's great.
Nah, I'm kidding.
It's a picture book, actually.
Chapter 5 is a law of consistency. And consistency, if you want to talk success, you want to talk growth, whatever the word that you use, you want to talk hitting goals, whatever it is, consistency is so key in our lives. And I'm not just talking about consistency at a job or consistency at your school, whatever that looks like. I'm talking consistency in your life. One of my mentors told me, it's not just about what everyone sees. It's about when someone doesn't see you, are you consistent in that time as well? And so me personally in my life, I've had to learn how to be better in that. I'm not where I want to be in that regard, but I'm learning and growing myself in consistency. But what Kyle said is, the tagline is motivation gets you going, discipline keeps you going. And so there were some points in the chapter that I just wanted to highlight. And most of the time I kind of read it and I dissect it, but I just wanted to write just a few things down that I thought maybe it may add some value. He says motivation doesn't last long, right? And so for me, motivation is like we were talking about last night. We just kind of talking through it. Motivation is like an energy drink.
Yeah.
Right? You get hyped up, right? But what keeps you going after you get hyped, because you get hyped, and I've been in that experience, maybe going to business conferences or talking to somebody who had a particular mindset that moved me forward. He moved me. I listen to a lot of motivation, but motivation is the energy drink, right? You have to have a B vitamin. You know what I'm saying? You have to have something, and I'm using some of this. You have to have some in it that is consistent.
Yeah,
that keeps going.
Going to metaphors here too. Going back, so I'll just stick with this outdoorsy metaphor.
Yeah.
You know, most fertilizers actually give that very instant growth and motivation. Most fertilizers you get, but actually, that actually creates long-term consequences because it actually kills the soil. Believe it or not. So the more organic fertilizers, they create less instant growth, but better long-term results, which is really interesting because I built a garden in my parents' yard. So for a year, I was like learning all this stuff, figuring out, you know. So whenever you hear organic fertilizers and stuff, if you're into gardening or your parents or whatever, that's actually feeding the soil, which thereby feeds the plants instead of just feeding the roots and the plants and killing the soil, which is really, really good.
That's so good, man. And so he says if you want to grow, consistency is key. So we're talking right here in this environment, we're talking about growth. And so I would say consistency is a huge element to growth. He also says you must develop yourself to success, right? So developing yourself to success, there's that consistent nature in doing that. John, actually, just a quick story about him. I believe he was about 23 to 25 years old. And he heard from another individual he was listening to, being motivated from, that individual took an hour a day to work on a task. So John said, what do I want to work on? And he said, I want to work on leadership. And so that's why John is considered one of the greatest leaders in our era, even in history, to be honest with you, because he took an hour a day to read on leadership and study leadership. Mm. And so one time John said there was a young guy that came up and asked and said, hey, John, I want to be like you. I want to have some of the successes that you had. And John said, do you want to do what I did, though?
Yes.
Do you want to do what I consistently did to get to where I am now? Or do you want to just see the results that I have now? And I think us younger, me too, but us in the younger generation, we want to see that result before we put that consistent work in. And so that's what's become of this generation with YouTube and instant successes. People that are acquiring those instant successes is that we all believe that we should have that. But what it really takes is that consistency, that's the consistent growth, as he mentioned earlier, that consistent growth over time that will keep you in that place and allow you to get there when you need to get there. Because sometimes we get there and we're not ready for it. But he wanted to speak to that.
Yeah. Something I wanted to add to that was not only do you have to realize that the people who are there went through a lot to get there, but also you have to take into account that the responsibility that they hold now that they are. So, I mean, we always want to look at it and say, hey, this person's extremely successful. What's the fastest way to get that way? But we're not taking into account that, like, first of all, it took a lot of dedication, time, consistency, discipline, all kinds of different principles to get to that point. But now that they're there, they hold a level of responsibility that you might not be ready for, which is why we have to understand that, again, it's a process. Yeah. And we have to really take that into account before we just start running that way. One more thing I wanted to hit as well with motivation. I like the simile metaphor for the energy drink, but I also wanted to say with motivation, sometimes you don't want to wait for motivation. Sometimes you have to focus on motivating yourself, because I've never met a person. There might be a person out there, but I've never met one that like is super motivated to mow the lawn. So I mean, but you have to go out there.
Usually you're cursing in your head. Why is that grass still growing?
Why is it?
Exactly.
Why did I want a lawn?
Why does it rain? Yeah.
Bro, that's why I got the condo, man. No yard to mow.
There you go.
There's a price to pay though.
There's a price to pay.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I'm with you on that. Like that's just kind of how I want to weigh in with the motivation. Like sometimes you don't want to wait for motivation. Sometimes you want to take a page out of Nike and just do it. Because, I mean, that's really important. Sometimes you're not going to want to do something that has to be done, and you're not going to be motivated to do it. So it's important to just kind of get past that and say, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyways, and then finding a consistency in doing it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's huge.
I love that.
Yeah, the "Just Do It" slogan was such a key to Nike's success, because I think Nike really started getting off whenever we were growing up, I think, in the 90s. I don't know the whole history, but that tagline "Just Do It" really resonated with athletes, and really can resonate with anybody. That you don't have to be an athlete to resonate with. Just do it. Like, stop thinking about, should I do this? Should I listen to this? Should I study? Should I do the homework? Should I take that exam? Should I do whatever? Like, just go do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Stop overthinking things.
Uh-huh. And so I want to also speak to the listeners as well. We're kind of talking in a way that is very effective in terms of like, okay, all right, this is what I need to do. Like, all right, so they're giving me some information. But I also want to tell you guys, start simple, start small. Mm-hmm. I've had the tendency to say, all right, I'm going to attack this thing and I'm going to go big or go home. But there's something that's wrong in that though sometimes, because sometimes it's those little baby steps every day that you have to maybe start small, because you may want to go to a certain space in your life or certain place and you try to attack it too much. What may happen is you may get tired in that and you're just go. Maybe start a little small. Start with waking up in the morning. I heard from who was it? I'm not remembering the name, but she said, Terry Savelle Foy. Love Terry Savelle Foy. She said sometimes you just have to get up in the morning and make your bed.
There's a book called "Make Your Bed Every Day." There you go. Written by a former Navy SEAL commander, I believe.
Yeah, and that's what they have to do in the military. Obviously, I just always want to shout out the military. Thank y'all for what y'all do. But I think that's what they do in the military. They wake up every morning and they make their bed. So just make your bed. Just start somewhere. Yeah. But start simple, because you get to a place where you're like, oh yeah. Me, when I was younger, I was like, oh man, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I'm just running so fast, but I'm not actually pinpointing maybe that one little step that it takes. And that gets to, I think we were talking what the compound effect and that principle. Yeah. You want to speak to that a little bit? Audible. Maybe a little bit of the compound effect? No? Oh, that's fine. That's cool. I thought he was looking at
the compound effect.
Yeah, go.
The compound effect is certainly tied to consistency. Mm-hmm. The compound effect, it's a book, but it's basically about little daily steps become extraordinary results over time. Yeah. And I just got that audio book the other week. So, that's a great tool. One thing that I started doing, like, I love that. Start small daily tasks lead to extraordinary results. I put my pull-up bar, instead of being in the hallway, I put it in the door frame in my room. So whenever I wake up, I'm all groggy. You do 5 pull-ups and like all of a sudden some blood's flowing. That's one little way that helps me to wake up. Changing up your alarm every now and then. Sometimes your alarm, assuming you have one, maybe some people don't, but changing up your alarm, because you get used to it. I got used to the radio going on. I'm like, all right, I'm so used to this. Once you sleep through it a few times, you're like, all right, it becomes a habit. But changing up your alarm is another practical way. It becomes a new sound, and it's just a different environment. It gets you out of that habit if you are sleeping in and you don't want to or you're not supposed to.
Yeah, that's so good. There's another book called The Slight Edge. That's a great book as well. If you guys want to pick a book up that just teaches that that baby step, that baby step. And when I think about it, when I think about things, I think about them in terms of sports, right? So when I used to hoop a little bit, but there's a lot of times where maybe a father was teaching his son that, hey man, like, go out and shoot. And he's like, Dad, I don't want to shoot today. Like, I don't want to do that today. And then the father says, well, Joe Smo over there, he's working harder than you're working. And then he's like, oh, well, I can't let Joe Smo beat me. But look, the steps that Joe Smo was making were just those consistent steps, compact, consistent steps. And he was attacking it every day. He was going out. If you're in sports or you do music, whatever it is, like, if you just take maybe just 15 minutes, it doesn't have to be an hour, 2 hours. Maybe just those 15 minutes every day to hone in your task. Yeah. Like John said, he just took 1 hour. He found an hour to dive into leadership and now you can call him one of the greatest leaders in the world today. So it's just awesome, man. It really just is.
Yeah.
You know?
When I was 15 and I first got into lifting some weights.
Yeah.
And, over time I started just having one curl dumbbell, 20 pounds or whatever. And I'd do curls during commercials back whenever most people like watch TV and had to watch commercials and all that crap. Now you just like turn on Netflix or whatever and it's all instant. Back then you had to sit through commercials and like wait until 4:00 for the cartoon to come on or whatever it was. But yeah, I started just doing dumbbell curls and, it progressed into working out twice a week, working out 3 times a week, and then eventually working out twice a day. And lately I've been trying to get back into that habit because that's like a part-time job when you're working out twice a day.
Oh, most definitely.
Trying to hit up, Ironman training among other things. But it all started just picking up a dumbbell. If you've never picked up weights, just pick up a dumbbell. You got to start somewhere. Arnold Schwarzenegger started somewhere, and then eventually he started working out, 6 hours a day and becoming Mr. Olympia however many times, but start somewhere. And I love this talking about, and I want to hear more about what you guys think. There's some great quotes here. Just this goes along the lines of what we're talking about. One is everything worthwhile in life takes dedication and time. That's the truth. Everything worthwhile in life takes dedication and time. So there's no shortcuts. It takes consistency. Mm-hmm. And then going back to, the compound effect, I noted, put an asterisk and all this stuff. Life goals are reached by setting annual goals. Annual goals are reached by reaching daily goals. Daily goals are reached by doing things which may be uncomfortable at first, but eventually become habits. Habits are powerful things. Habits turn actions into attitudes and attitudes into lifestyles.
Wow.
I just underlined all that.
That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, that's great actually. So Jonathan and I we were talking about habits on the way over here and talking about how they say that it's like 21 days that it takes to really create a habit.
Say, yeah.
And you go through a lot of psychological stages on the way to that habit.
Mm-hmm.
And you're motivated in the beginning, but then
right.
Midway through you're like, okay, like why am I doing this? And then you kind of have to push through until you actually build a habit. And I just think that's so important in everyday life of building habits. And I like what you said, Kyle, about how in our generation we don't really have to create habits anymore because you can get anything you want at any time instantly. And I know for me, sometimes that's great. But when I look at my life, I'm like, well, that might be how we've made things with technology, but that's not how like real life goes. Mm-hmm. And so you really have to take a step back and say, okay, like, what do I really want? How do I really want to grow? And write it down. Write it down. I think that's really important when you're growing. Is like, personally, I made what's called a vision board. And I just took a big poster board size of paper and
right.
Put
like 99 cents at Walmart.
Yeah. And I just sat down for like an hour and I was like, okay, like who do I want to be? Where do I want to be in 50 years? And who do I want to be doing that? And I started writing down these words, discipline, consistency, enlightened, just all kinds of different words that I wanted to be and I wanted to become. And then, so I'd look at it every day. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, it's great that I'm looking at it when I get to my house, but I'm not always at my house. So I took it and I broke it down and I put it in a vision binder that I carry around with me. And every day I'll sit down and I'll write down like, okay, like if one of the qualities I wanted to become is thankful, then I'll write down, I'll be like, okay, today I am thankful for this, or in this situation, I was thankful. So, because it's hard to see the progress. If you're not writing it down,
that's key.
It's really hard to see. So, visualizing that process and the progress is extremely important. So, write it down. Write down what you want to do, and then write down daily actions that you've done to become that, and really focus on that. And when you do that, everything falls into place. It's like as you become the person you want to be, you start having successes that you never thought you could have. And that's just really important to write it down and be consistent with it, but visualize it. Be intentional about it. I know John Maxwell talks about intentionality. We have to be intentional. We have to write it down. We have to think about it. Think through it. Don't just take someone else's success or where they're at and say, okay, I want that. What do you want? What are you passionate about? Who do you want to be? Write it down and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so key. I don't know if Conlon was able to get some of those books over there underneath the TV, but a while back I just started, like every year, started going to Barnes and Noble and get like a 5-pack of moleskin binder, not binders, but little booklets. And that's where I keep, and then I put a title on it, like, this is my spiritual development, this is my personal development book, this is my physical development book, and I keep that in my garage where I work out. And yeah, just writing it down, even if you don't necessarily look back on it that often, maybe you look back on it at the end of the year, once a year, and you can say, is it really worth writing stuff down for 10 minutes a day all year just to look at it once a year? I'd say yeah, because then you get to see, and that will keep you going. And then over the years too, maybe 10 years down the line, maybe you keep these books and you get to see the things you were learning when you were going up, and you're never too young to start, call it 15 years old. Like, you need to go and get some little booklets right now if you don't have any, and start journaling, start writing down thoughts.
Good stuff. Let me plug again.
Plug
for the girls. Like I had mentioned, Terry Savelle Foy. Not just for the girls, but for the guys as well. But she's fantastic. Her dad's name is actually Jerry Savelle, and she talks a lot of what he talked about, vision boards and writing the things down. That's really her focus in her life, and she's had massive success from, maybe somebody would say, out of nowhere, but because she did these things, it allowed her to get there, right? Because she consistently grew herself. And so I just love to plug her in.
Yeah.
But I plug her in to jump to that next chapter that I wanted to talk about.
And we may have to get into that in the next sector.
We're
about to take our break.
Bro.
Yeah, I actually wanted to read this, though, before we even move on. This
definitely. Go ahead.
John put in some funny parts in the book. He said, the why is what keeps you motivated long after that first rush of energy and enthusiasm wears off. It can carry you through when willpower isn't enough. Think of it as why power. And he says, I love the story of the salesman who looked out the window of the hotel restaurant at a blinding snowstorm. He asked the waiter, do you think the roads will be clear enough in the morning to travel? The waiter replied, depends on if you're on salary or commission.
That's good stuff.
I love that story. So we'll take a break. We'll be back in a minute. And we're back. So for the last segment, we want to primarily hit on the law of environment. So surrounding yourself with people that are going to build you up with a positive environment. And John Maxwell, the author, his subtitle for the law of environment was Growth Thrives in Conducive Surroundings. So Gat, I know you want to talk about this chapter. What were some of those points you wanted to hit on law of environment?
Man, law of environment is key. You can say a law of association. There's other terms that you can use for the law of environment, but one thing I want the listeners to know is you're not a tree. You're not a tree, and you can grow in any situation, but sometimes you have to get out of that situation in order to grow. Some situations there's no growth, and the people around that don't have the correct mindset. And so you got to get yourself in a place where there's greater mindset. Like living with this guy over here is so good for me because he's always looking to grow. He's had a little bit of success in terms of what the world would see for success. And so what I see that and I'm like, wow, okay, I can acquire something for my life. And so it's always good to have that person or those people in your environment, your atmosphere that are pushing you forward. Yeah. Because if you get into an environment that there's no growth, there's no one moving forward, everyone's doing this or doing that, that's not conducive to any growth, then you become that. What do they say? You become the 5 people you hang out with or you associate with.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's so important. One point that John makes in the book is you must make sure in any environment that you are that you're not the greatest person in terms of growth in that environment. You have to have bigger dreamers in that room than even you to expand your dream. You always want to surround yourself where you're not the top dog in that place, because what happens is I'm feeling myself. Right? They seen that I'm fit. I'm good. I'm fine. Everybody else is lower than me, so I don't have to reach that next level of growth.
Dude, you're tying this back to the law of modeling for all those models out there that need to read John Maxwell. We all need someone higher than us to model.
Come on now.
Dude, bringing it.
Preach it.
Bringing it.
Right? And so I love that point because I found myself sometimes saying, oh, you know, in the environment that I am sometimes at my job, I'm like, man, my mindset is greater. Why do I need to work on my mindset? But that comes back to even the point that they were making about how it's not about you, how it's about you have to be thinking, all right, let me get that growth so that I can teach someone else to acquire some growth in their life. Right. But it just I just want to stay on course because association, especially at the age that you guys are, just learning and taking mindsets from the people around you. Make sure you're in the right environment. Make sure you're with the right people to do the task and get to the call that you have for your life. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. John even writes in the chapter a cool analogy that I noted. They say that if you put a pumpkin in a jug when it's the size of a walnut, it will grow to the size and shape of the jug and never get bigger. That can happen to a person's thinking. Don't allow that to happen to you. You know. Yeah. So if you put yourself into this, you know, small sphere of people, and the author John Maxwell even talked about how in his first ministry area, he got offered a promotion and he ended up taking a job somewhere else because he didn't want to be necessarily the head honcho at that point in his life. He recognized, he wrote in this chapter, just to set the record straight so you don't think I'm bragging, I need to tell you that I was a medium-sized fish in a very small pond. Mm-hmm. You know?
And he had to break out.
Yeah.
What is that crab in the bucket, right? You ever heard of crab in the bucket?
Tell me about the crab in the bucket.
So what happens in a crab in a bucket is when the crabs are in a huge, you know, they're about to be cooked, if you will, they're about to be cooked, and a crab tries to escape the bucket, tries to come out of the bucket and be free from that bucket or whatever it is. Another crab will grab that crab back down into the bucket, right? And so that's what happens in your life is when you want to acquire some personal growth, some become greater than you are at this point. If you're surrounding yourself by crabs, they'll just want to pull you down. Yeah. Because what happens is when you step out, it really shows the laziness in that other individual. The laziness not for them. So they're like, wait. He's acquiring the growth. Like I can't be revealed that I'm not doing that as well. So they'll say, nah, man, don't do that. Nah, man, like I don't like the way that I don't like your mind. I don't like how you're growing. I don't like that. That makes them uncomfortable. Right. And so that's why you don't want to be around crabby people that are going to pull you back to the level that you were. You've got to find the right people that are going to say, you know what, go and be greater. Yeah. You know, go and fully go find your purpose and go and attack that in a way that's going to set other people free and give you some of that success and that personal growth.
Yeah. So I know everyone's heard the mantra, birds of a feather flock together. I heard it for years from my parents.
I think I heard that in the Mighty Duck movie.
Oh, yeah. I think so. I think it was in that.
I think that's where it's come from.
Great set of movies.
So I've heard that for years. And my parents used to say that over and over and over. And I couldn't stand it, but I think that was because I didn't understand it. And so as I moved on, I started to realize, I was like, man, I can't move on. Like the people I'm around really are holding me down like the crabs. And so I think it's important to understand who is conducive to your growth. Really take a step back, look at your life and say, okay, like who is taking me farther? Who is setting the bar higher? And, in order to do that, I think that mentors are incredibly important.
Yeah. So good.
And in order to really latch on to a mentor, you need a lot of humility. Yeah. So taking a step back and saying, hey, I want to grow. I don't know it all. I need someone who knows more than me, and following that person, putting yourself under their leadership and being mentored by them. And I think the mark of a really good leader is having someone ahead of you and someone behind you. Yeah. So having someone to mentor and having someone mentoring you.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
just really important. And the law of attraction is the same thing as the law of environment. And it's just those people around you are who you end up being. And so have someone ahead of you, have someone behind you, and have someone right there with you to do life with, to take you farther, and to teach too.
Yeah. That's so good. They say to teach is to learn twice.
Yep.
You know, and you're never too young to teach somebody something. There's always somebody that needs to know your knowledge. You know, if you're 10 years old, 8-year-olds need to know. If you're 18 years old, 16-year-olds need to know, you know, what you have, so that progressively every generation gets a little bit better. And talking about accountability, you know, accountability gets hit in this chapter among many other things here. And he says, you know, I highly recommend that you also find an accountability partner to take the growth journey with you. That person will help you to stick with your right decisions and help you to avoid making wrong ones. A good accountability partner should love you unconditionally, desire your success, be mature, ask you agreed upon questions, and help you when you need help.
That's
You know,
good.
and those are kind of some big picture things that he describes as a good accountability partner, and that's so key.
One thing he mentions is allow a mentor, allow somebody to speak into your life and kind of lower your ego. I think when you're this age, you get to a point where you think you're Superman. And you think you can do it all, and you don't need anybody's help. Man, when I was that age, when I was young, I didn't want to have anything to do with what my parents were saying or what anybody was saying. But somebody's been there and done it, and they can teach you. And so you got you need literally y'all need to let your ego go and allow people to speak into your life, because what that does is they can give you their experience, and you can avoid some of the traps in life that may come your way because you allow somebody to speak into your life. You can talk about mentors and mentees. We can talk about all this stuff. Yeah. But if you're not listening to your mentor and applying that whatever they're saying to your life, why do you have someone speaking into your life? Yeah. You've got to lower the ego. We're not Superman. We're not superheroes. We've got to understand that there's areas of our life that we've got to see growth in, and somebody may come along and say, hey, look, watch out. Go this way. Go this way. And they're just trying to help you and they want your success in life. So I think that's so important, man. It really, really, truly is.
Yeah. You know, being willing to learn, you know, is one of the first steps. And if someone says something that you don't agree with, either A, ask a question, or B, you know, say, I want to take some time to process that, you know. If it's something that you really just don't understand, but don't necessarily just, because you don't understand, don't necessarily just open your mouth and say you disagree. You know, be willing to ask questions. But for the most part, whenever you have a mentor, they're going to be speaking pretty straightforward truths into your life.
And they keep you accountable, man.
Yeah.
Like you can veer off the road if you don't have someone to tell you, hey, this is where the road is. They can keep you going to whatever you're looking to get to, and however you're looking to progress in your life. Somebody else can help you stay on track to whatever road that you want to into. And so I think we were talking about accountability amongst our company, amongst ourselves, to get to that success, which really is that personal growth in our life. But you mentioned you wanted to talk another chapter that I'm excited to talk about here real quick.
Yeah, the law of the rubber band was one that stuck out to me, and the subtitle for the law of the rubber band was growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. Yeah. You know, and one of the quotes that I still remember to this day from the chapter, very simple, is, we are just like rubber bands, we're most useful when stretched. And, you know, it also sticks out to me because, especially in high school, I stretched a lot, like literally stretched, right? Because I'm, you know, Kyle, I don't know if you have this, but, you know, working out, you know, I worked up to where I was working out 2 times a day. I was always just stiff, you know, very injury prone. And literally I would, in the middle of classes, literally just stretch. And the teachers were okay with it. And in between classes, stretch, you know, always stretching. Even to this day, you know, I'll put in the work for a run or something. And if I don't stretch, and especially if I don't do the recovery tactics and eat well, I might get 20 to 30% of the gains that I should be getting, you know, and little things too. You know, I could go on and on about endurance training, and you can wear compression socks, which I think gives you a couple of percentage points of recovery, you know, eat well, get proper sleep, you know, drink good water, cut out the sodas, all kind of things. but the law of the rubber band, one thing that I think about is that relationship between stress and strain. And when I was in engineering school, I was learning about metal, what it does when it reacts with tension. And so as a little engineering lesson, most concrete that you see in the environment is actually reinforced concrete. So there's rebar, there's metal, because concrete's very good at stress, at compression, pushing into it. Metal is very good at tension, not very good at compression. So you combine the two into one, and it has the best of both worlds. And one interesting thing about metal is that whenever you're putting it under tension, it begins to deform and elongate, and it begins to change. But actually, after a while, you can stress it all you want, and it doesn't even change. And especially when I'm doing endurance sports, I think about those first few miles. It's really tough, and then you hit that point, and you can just kind of keep going. But I think about that, and about how metal actually after a certain point of stressing, it'll go back, right? So it's like us. If we do a little bit, we might go back. We might deform a little bit, but we'll go back. But actually, metal, if you pre-stress it, which is usually what they do before they insert it into the concrete, if you stress it enough, it'll actually stay that way. It'll stay strained, which basically means there's a difference, there's a delta between its final length and its original length. And so that's one thing that I think about, and that I hope that others could even understand. It's just a way of thinking about it, especially because I love Iron Man. I just love that intensity. I love thinking about metal. I love metal music. Just all things metal. It's just all good.
Kyle, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
When you talk about stretching and the rubber band mentality, what would you say stretching looks like?
Yeah, Stretching.
What does that look like?
Yeah, well, for me, you always have to ask yourself, how comfortable am I, or how uncomfortable am I? And it's interesting for me because I've done CrossFit endurance, which is kind of a combination of doing fitness stuff and endurance. And most people think, and it's kind of true, it's tough to do endurance and strength at the same time. It's very difficult. But I've actually found, for me at least, I'm happier when I'm doing endurance stuff, even though I love doing weight stuff. But I actually perform better at strength stuff when I'm doing endurance stuff. If I do a 20-mile run, don't ask me to squat a ton of weight. But I actually perform better when I have some amount of stress in my life. And I think you guys would relate. If you're just a couch potato, you're not going to perform your best. But we often want to get comfortable. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
You want to get comfortable. But, for me, and whenever I'm literally stretching after a run, I might turn on an audiobook or something, or I might turn on some good music, or I'll try to figure out a way to use this time better. But just always asking yourself, how uncomfortable am I? Because literally stretching, it is somewhat uncomfortable. But if you do it over time, stretch those hammies on the ground, eventually over time, your muscles, just like metal, if you stretch it enough, it permanently deforms. And your mind is the same way. You stress your mind, it'll permanently deform. If you just do a little bit, it goes back, just like metal. Because metal is a little bit malleable. Yeah. But those are some metaphors and ways that I think about the rubber band mentality, and I'll even find a good few quotes on that. But maybe for you guys, how is stretching? Obviously, stretching has gotten you guys to business success, or just a personal success, personal growth. What are some ways that stretching has influenced you guys?
So for me, man, I love stretching because I've always heard that success comes out of your comfort zone. And so any success, like personal growth and all the things that we're talking about, you can't be comfortable. It's not comfortable, because sometimes I'm reading in a book, or maybe there'll be a conversation being had, or I'm studying something, I'm listening to an audio or something, and somebody pushes a button in me, right? I could turn that off. I could close the book. I could stop the conversation and just not grow. Or I could say, you know what? Let me read a little bit more. Let me listen a little bit more, because I know that button that push was some area in my life that needs to get better. I've got to be better. I've got to grow, and I think he's got a point to make as well.
Yeah, what I was going to say about stretching is generally when you're scared of something, that's when you know you need to stretch. So we've talked a lot about comfort zone, and I just wanted to make it like a little more layman's term. Like, what do you fear? What are you scared of? When you think about something that you want to do in life and you fear that, do it. That's what gets you out of your comfort zone. It's doing something you're scared to do. I think back to in college, I had just moved up to Columbia, going to USC, and a guy came into my class. He said, "Hey, we're doing an internship where you run your own business." And immediately I was like, I'm intrigued, but what do you mean run my own business? So, I talked to the guy a little bit, and initially I was terrified. I was like, I have no idea how to run a business. This is a internship. This is going to be the rest of my life kind of thing. And so I ended up joining, and that got me out of my comfort zone. I was scared of it, and instead of running from it, I ran to it. And that actually shaped my mentality. It told me, in doing it, I was like, I have a passion for entrepreneurship. I need to do this, even though it terrifies me. And I think that that's an important thing to understand about a comfort zone is, what do you fear? Are you passionate about that? Why are you scared? And then say, okay, I'm scared of it. I'm going to push past that. And that's where you get out of your comfort zone, and that's where you stretch.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, like courage. A lot of people think courage is the absence of fear, but it's the acknowledgement of fear and acting anyway.
Exactly.
Most
Absolutely.
often.
Real quick, can I say something real quick? Even this weekend, I spoke to it was about 3,000 people. I actually was at a church, local church called Seacoast, and they asked me to talk about the church a little bit, give some announcements, talk about the church. And 3,000 people, one service was 1,500 people, right? And so I had to do actually four times doing this, and every single time I was extremely nervous. And that gets back to I love self-talk, because I started to say, you'll do great. And over and over I said, you'll do great. And I ended up doing great. But like he said, I have to do it. Right. Just do it. I don't know. Yeah, just do it. I don't know if y'all know, but the greatest fear nowadays is public speaking. It's become the greatest fear in people. And so if you have greater than death, which is crazy. But I mean, hey, look, but you gotta attack it. You gotta go after it. Yeah. And so in that time of waiting for it to come, I had to let myself know, look, I'm not gonna not do it. Right? Every time you step on that stage, every time you embrace, like he mentioned, every time you embrace that fear that you may have, just go after it. Yeah. And then over time, that fear doesn't become is not a fear any longer for you. And then you can step to something else that's a fear, and you can keep winning these battles. Right. You can keep winning these fear battles with faith. Yep. And it's awesome, man. That's solid. Yeah. Yep. Maybe last thing I'll say on this chapter, I'm going to paraphrase. The author basically says you can choose comfort or you can choose potential. Yeah. It's your choice, comfort or potential. That's good stuff. Yeah. So that's about all the time that we have as we go into final thoughts, last round. What would you guys be your final thoughts on being intentional or on growing others? I mean, obviously the first chapter, what is it? The Law of Intentionality. Yeah. And what does that say? It says growth doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen. And so you got to get to a place where you're very intentional. Like we talked about, maybe doing some small things. Maybe you're getting up at 8 a.m. Maybe y'all have to get up obviously early. Maybe you're getting up at 6. It's going to be different for everybody. Yeah, 5:30, something like that. Maybe take 20 minutes on something that's growth. 20 minutes to read, 20 minutes to listen. Just maybe that small process, and over time you'll grow in that area. That's good. Over time you'll grow in that area. So, but growth doesn't just happen. So you don't just sit there and grow. You have to attack it. You have to be about it. You have to think about it, and just do it. Just do the growth process. Did you want to give the listener something as well? Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot about like how to grow and how to become successful, and I just wanted to kind of close by saying, once you reach success or once you have success doing something, I'm reading a book right now called Good to Great, and he talks about levels of leadership, and there's a 1 through 5, and 5 being the greatest, and he talks about a level 5 leader has 2 overwhelming qualities, and the first one is an ambition to a cause, meaning selflessness.
they will do whatever it takes to further that cause. So it's something beyond themselves. And I think that points a lot back to what you said, Kyle, in the beginning, when you're growing for other people. And the second point he makes is humility. And these two things together are what he's seen make leaders go from good to great. And he talked specifically about a mentality called the mirror window mentality. And he said that great leaders look in the mirror when there's a problem and says, how can I do better? And when they achieve success, they look out the window and say, everybody who was with me, I give the success to. So they gave the success away,
right,
and they took the responsibility of the problem. And I think that, it's important to grow. It's important to have success. And I think it's very important to understand how to handle success when you have it.
It's good.
I love that point, man. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. My last or final thought, especially staying on those lines of being intentional, is acknowledging and believing and having faith that everyone out there, no matter how old you are, you've got potential inside of you. And it's so tough because often, especially from family, people are told some kind of lie about themselves. They're spoken some kind of curse into themselves, and they don't even realize it, some kind of prophecy. And often they're living it out and they don't even realize it. So if there's anything that I could speak into others, it'd be that you do have potential regardless of what others might have said. You just have to be intentional on using it. And that'd be about it.
That's good stuff, man.
Absolutely.
Any other plugs or shout outs you guys want to give?
I mean, just shout out, man. I shout out to mentors. I shout out to people that want to see people grow. But not only do they want to see them grow for to say, oh, I helped them grow, but they truly want to see them grow. They truly want to see them, grow themselves and have reach the goals and maybe some of the things that they want to see. I plugged earlier Terry Savelle Foy, John Maxwell. There's other people, Gary Cassee, guy by the name of Gary V's pretty good. Some points that he makes is pretty good. Just those people who are helping people grow, moving people forward. I plugged the military earlier, man. Like my dad was 20 years, and so we're so grateful and thankful that you guys put your life on the line for us, man. So and I always plug Jesus Christ, man, because he's the only reason that we even can come here and have the conversation, right?
Amen.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Anything else?
I want to shout out first and foremost to God. I mean, I know that my success began with him. It will end with him. And I'm thankful that he's not only teaching me how to have success, but how to handle success. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful, obviously, for my parents, for all the lessons they've taught me, even if I didn't listen to some of them when I was younger. And one of my mentors in college, Christian Chasmer, wrote a book, Limiting Beliefs, and exactly what you were talking about just a second ago, like people speaking stuff into your life that's not true. You are not limited by what someone else says. You're only limited by what you believe.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's extremely important. So I want to give a shout out to Christian Chasmer as well.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, thank you guys for investing your time and coming on the show.
Anytime,
thank you guys for helping the listeners to become greater and to think bigger. So appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
We were meant to live for so much more. Have we lost ourselves?